The 2025 British Grand Prix. We're now nearing the half point of the season, ladies and gentlemen, which means we finally arrive in the UK. A place where you get to have fish and chips, drink tea and water, and have horrific teeth.
Rev up the Bugatti!
Assuming you don't get stabbed, of course. But most importantly, you get to witness one of the best races of the season in Silverstone, one of the greatest circuits in the world where literally every single corner is a masterpiece, which makes me convinced that it's physically incapable of producing a stinker. We had 2003, 2012, 2013, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2024... You get the point. This track goes crazy and never failed to deliver crazy moments like Hamilton's tire exploding, a lot of other tires exploding, some dude with the IQ of Mohammed bin Sulaim running on track, a bunch of people with the IQ of Mohammed bin Sulaim sitting on the track, and many others. It's also the home race of damn near half the grid, and I'm not just talking about the drivers, literally half the teams are based in here. This of course allows those teams to easily bring upgrade packages to their cars, and so they did. Most notably McLaren, who are running a new floor, and Red Bull and Aston, who brought all kinds of things. But before I get into the weekend, there's something I have to talk about. Coming into this weekend, Max Verstappen got completely surrounded by the media and started aura farming, which, yeah, this goes pretty hard, not gonna lie. In case you somehow haven't heard, the reason for this is that the love interest of Toto has finally had enough of Red Bull's tomfoolery and started dabbling with Mercedes.
Got a new contract yet?
Needless to say, this move would cause Lance Stroll levels of carnage in the driver market. This would not only leave Red Bull with no first driver, but George Russell will become a free agent, at least assuming he's the one to get replaced, of course, which is the smarter decision, not only because Kimi is still developing and could become the next Oscar or Verstappen, but also because an all-Iran and Israel lineup would lead to disaster, to put it lightly. Something Toto is very familiar with. Nothing is confirmed yet, of course, but judging by Max's reaction to the crash last week, his evasive answers to the media, Red Bull's panic push to bring Arvid Lindblad, and also the fact that the same people who reported Hamilton's and Yui's moves are predicting this too, it's safe to say that the move will happen at some point. And of course, as the based Giga Chad Max Verstappen glazer that I am, I'd love to see this happen, because Mercedes are looking good for 2026, and I just want to see my boy winning again, alright? But this is just the beginning of the mayhem, with Hadjar also saying he's interested in being demoted to Red Bull for some reason, replacing Tsunoda, who is having a shocking run of form. There's also some rumors pointing at a potential Bottas to Alpine move to replace Franco Colapinto, who has been cooking with the stove off, but at least he knows it.
Yeah, it's honest, it's like a contract with Alpine, you get one shot.
This is because Alpine are finally getting their shit together and brought Steve Nielsen back. However, the move is probably still a bad idea because a certain fanbase will not be very pleased with Bottas once you arrive in Mexico should this happen. Mercedes also introduced a special livery, by the way, although calling it special is quite the stretch considering all they did was change the arrows to orange. Which is also kind of funny because they literally decided to run this exact livery at the same weekend where all these rumors are going around, but maybe it was intentional. McLaren were also running a livery far more worthy of being called special, and it looks phenomenal in my opinion. And yes, I know they've run a similar livery before. What can I say? I'm a sucker for nostalgia. I mean, just look at this thing. V-Carb, in the spirit of the many special Silverstone Red Bull liveries, changed their livery too, and I can't say it looks nearly as good as those, to be honest. Oh, and by the way, as the election for president of the FIA is approaching with Sainz Sr. withdrawing, the only remaining hope we have is Tim Mayer, who got fired by MBS in 2024. However, chances are he's not winning and we're absolutely cooked. But enough dilly-dallying and let's just cut to the chase. In free practice 1, Arvid was having his first go in an F1 car replacing Tsunoda, and so was Paul Aron replacing Hülkenberg at Sauber. Early in the session, Gasly had a moment and then a massive spin, and Stroll did the same in turn 3. Carlos Sainz went too wide in turn 7, damaging the floor, V-Carb were once again shitting on their sister team, and not just time-wise because the RB21 is an actual piece of shit.
I would expect after the summer break, a bit of a switch on in terms of upgrades.
Unbelievable. That looked like an utter nightmare.
Paul then blocked Albon as the usual traffic jam and blocking that goes on every week continues to be a menace. Gabi Bortolato, coming off the back of his first points for Sauber, who by the way have scored more than Red Bull have in the last 3 races, had a gargantuan spin at Copse. Charles Leclerc went wide at the penultimate corner, and at the final moments Max also had the same, with Norris touching the gravel. But in the end, this was the finishing order. Free practice 2 saw the teams bolt on the softs and send it, which resulted in competitive lap times between McLaren, Mercedes and Ferrari, with Red Bull being around 8/10 slower or more because of the understeer introduced by the upgrades. This got so bad even Stroll was going faster. But at least they weren't alone, as Alpine were absolutely nowhere down in 18th and 20th as usual. Carlos Sainz had a massive spin and almost hit Hamilton out of turn 6, which was, along with turn 7 and turn 3, an absolute menace for the drivers. Liam Lawson, who did great in Austria, and you all cooked me in the comments last video because I forgot to mention it, was blocked by a Haas. But come the end of the session, this was the finishing order. After a small delay, free practice 3 got underway, and the lap times were immediately close, with Ferrari still looking very strong, as McLaren were pulling the sandbagging of the century. Lance Stroll almost had another spin because of the wind, Max got blocked by Gasly, so Lawson decided to get revenge on him, Albon then went wide into Copse, with his session getting red flagged in its final moments because Behrman's car broke. Russell locked up into turn 3 after the restart, Ollie messed up his pit entry, breaking his front wing and getting a 10-place grid penalty after Gabriel Bortoleto had a massive shunt in Megats and Begats, destroying the car and bringing the red flag yet again, leaving us with this finishing order. In Q1, people started going out early, as summer rain had started. In those runs, Piastri was fastest along with Alonso coming out of nowhere, and Ferrari in classic fashion losing their practice pace. Franco Colapinto then had a huge spin and broke his car, red flagging the session. Yeah, bro better start learning Chinese. After the restart, rain got even worse. Ferrari almost ruined Hamilton's qualifying by not doing another run because of fuel.
There's still time. Why would I have how?
Got no fuel.
And all sorts of people managed to be in the top 10, including both Haas cars, with Gasly scraping through. In Q2, the track dried out once more, which allowed Norris to come out on top of Max and Piastri, who set exactly the same time, with Ferrari still being nowhere. In the final runs, however, the sun came out and blessed them into being 1-2, and cooked both Williams in the process, but most shockingly, Behrman and Gasly made it to Q3, all while Tsunoda was 11th. But now it's Q3. The RB21 started doing RB21 things and fell off for no reason, whilst the two McLarens and Hamilton took the podium positions. In the pole shootouts, however, Norris crossed the line first but failed to beat Piastri, who had a moment on his lap. Hamilton and Leclerc only managed 5th and 6th, but it was Max Verstappen who put it all together and got pole position. And this tractor. Somehow. It's now time for the race, and some heavy rain had fallen, which made the last sector drenched, and led to the FIA making the stupidest decision to start the formation lap behind the safety car, despite the track being nearly dry, with some people coming in for slicks immediately and completely ruining their race. But we finally got going, and Max Verstappen got a decent start and managed to keep the lead, with Gasly jumping to 5th, and the McLarens behind almost making contact. Liam Lawson then turned into Ocon and fucked it into the wall, bringing out the VSC, under which Bortoleto binned it as well, which caused yet another VSC a few laps after the restart. But when we finally got racing again, Max had zero grip due to the dry setup, which allowed Piastri to overtake. Charles and Kimi were fighting for 14th, on slicks mind you, which was the funniest thing. A few laps later, it started pissing down with rain, allowing Norris to get past Max, although his pit crew cooked him and undid his work. All this mayhem allowed Lance Stroll to go from 17th to 4th, matter of fact, the entire top 10 looked like something out of a fever dream. But all that rain brought a real safety car after Charles cut Megats Begats. But in typical FIA fashion, it stayed for 50 laps before coming in, but when it did, Ocon got instantly cooked and so was Yuki. A few laps later, Isaac Hadjar hit Antonelli because of poor visibility and completely destroyed his car. But now that most of the rookies were out, I wonder if I've seen that before, the race restarted again, and Verstappen spun dropping down to 10th, and Behrman did too into left field after Yuki absolutely annihilated him. Piastri then got a 10-second penalty for erratic driving under the safety car, Hulk caught Stroll and overtook him for a podium position in a Sauber, Russell pitted later on for hards, and yeah, that didn't work out. The rest of the grid followed suit a few laps later, and yeah, that didn't work out either. Ollie Behrman then hit Ocon for no reason, and Leclerc went off all by himself. But the race was won by Lando Norris, who had a faultless drive in front of his home crowd, with Stroll P5 and a maiden podium for Nico Hülkenberg after 239 race starts. The Drivers' Championship is getting tight as a result, although if not for the Canada blunder it would have been closer. And in the Constructors, Sauber leapfrogged everyone thanks to Hülkenberg. And wow, what a race that was, and prepare to say goodbye to Franco Colapinto, by the way. But anyways, click on the video on screen to learn about the worst F1 teams in history, and see you next time.